learn about Gemara today. Purim's Gemara. Like Hudim Haisa Oida, Simcha Sasavikar. Oida is Taida. So first thing I have to do is learn Taida. Pei Zayin is today's daf. We did the Mishnah yesterday. Just interesting, the Pedig we're learning now is Eileh and Achnokin, and the last Pedig is Chelik, but according to the Rambam and others, Eileh and Achnok is actually the last Pedig in Sanhedrin, and we should have been learning now Chelik. Nevertheless, this is in the order of the Gemara. Mishnais might in some Mishnais is different. So the Mishnah told us that now we're learning Zakim Mamre. Zakim Mamre also receives Chenek. And we said there's a structure here. First he goes to his local Bezdin, he just argues with them. They go then to the Bezdin Yerushalayim, and we said there are 3 levels of Bezdin there, and finally you go to the Supreme Court, and he maintains whatever his opinion, and they tell him what they think. If he goes back and repeats his opinion, he's still not considered Zakim Mamre. It's only if he goes back and he says, this is what you should do. He says, last says you have to follow my way, not follow them. Only then do we say that he's considered Zakim Mamre. Says the Gemara. We learned, and also another we learned is that if he's someone who's not qualified to be a dayan, and Rashi says in Saita, if he's under 40 years old, so he's not qualified to be a dayan, then it doesn't matter what he says. We ignore his opinion, so he's not considered Zakim Mamre. And this Chumrah is actually his kula, his savior. Says the Gemara at the very bottom of Pevah Bay. What we learned? We're going to go through the entire pasuk, and we're going to say that each word in that pasuk means he's arguing a certain halachas. So we're talking about someone who is someone who's over 40 years old, he's qualified. Usually mufla means the top of the bezin. Over here means just that he's qualified to be a member of the bezin. Then it says the pasuk mimcha. It says kipali mimcha davar. So what's the word from mimcha? Zayayitz. When it comes to now we're going to go through each case. It comes to ma'abed to make a leap year, not make a leap year. He decides to argue with them because they have to seek advice, consult. That's yoyitz. Then it says davar. First we say it says that from you it comes out that you have to devise and work out. It says when it comes to yaitz. Okay, then it says here. We find a pasuk where it says yaitz and mimcha. So when it says in this pasuk, mimcha means something to do with consulting ibur of the year or of the month. Then we say what's davar? Davar is halach. He argues the halacha l'Moshe Messinai, and for that alone he gets also killed. In fact, the Rambam makes out a rule that even in Tanoi, we don't find in the Gemara that they argue on halacha l'Moshe Messinai. And in fact, whenever we do, like in more Tainus and Beis and other places, all of us should talk about what's going on here. Because the Rambam says you can't argue on halacha l'Moshe Messinai. And they say the market here. Then it says pasuk davar zu halacha l'mishpat kipal mechadav l'mishpat ze hadin. He argues regarding a din. Something, let's say you learn a gzeira shava, one of the 13 ways of learning, and he argues it, and that he gets killed. It can't mean literally din, because later on it says bein din ledin. Okay, bein dam ledam, what's dam ledam? Whether it's dam nida, whether it's dam later, the blood of when you give birth, or whether it's dam ziva, all of those cases. We're going to go through the Gemara, going to go through each one of these. Bein din ledin, when he argues with din, bein din lefash din mama din maktan. Okay, what kind of din Torah it is? If he argues with a bezin, he says that they're wrong, and he passes contrary. We'll go negative different kinds of leprosy. He says it's not a leprosy. They say it is. Or if I cared, doesn't matter what kind of leprosy it is. Leprosy on the person, in the house, on the clothes. Then it says the pasuk divrei riba d'shrecha. Divrei are things to do with words. So eila charam, anything to do with words. So these are people who consecrate their items or erchin, or they say that my value is going to be mikdash or ekdashus. He's makdish something. These are all things that happen because of words. And he argues in halachas. The Gemara will go through each one of them. What halach is he arguing with? Ribos. What's divrei? It says divrei ribos, arguments. What's arguments? So ashkar saita. Saita is based on an argument of husband and wife. Ba'arifas egla. Again, over there also, we don't know who the murderer is. And why would a person be murdered? Probably because there was an argument somewhere. So we put that under the banner of ribos. And then it's about Ba'arifas egla. Then taharas mitzayda. What's the tahara of a mitzayda? That I was there also. Why does a person become a mitzayda? Because he said lashon hara. That means he antagonized somebody. That's divrei ribos. That's arguments. All comes from arguments. Misharech. Then the pasuk says divrei words of argument misharech in your gates. When misharech in your gates, the leket chichopeh. These include the laws of leket. Leket is when you drop a few pieces in front of you, 2 pieces, up to 2 pieces. We'll see later in opinion 3. Shikha is you were left behind. 2 pieces, and you're not allowed to go back for it. And there's arguments halachas we'll see, and payah, the corner of your field. And they're all dedicated, belong to the poor. Ukamta, and you get up in bezin. It says in the pasuk, "Ukamta v'lisa lamokim." When you get up in bezin, you stood up from the bezin. That means you were first standing at the bezin. You had an argument with them already. The lower courts, the one in your city. Also, and we said the counter because bezin is supposed to sit. From here we learn that he's supposed to sit when they paskin. And then Valisa, and then you go up the Lamed Shem Midrash going to Yisrael. From here we learn that base Midrash is higher because you're going up to the base of Midrash. That Yisrael going Yisrael is higher than all other countries. How do I know that? I was also saying Alamokim to the place Malamed Shamokim Gaidim. From here we learn now that it's Dafka the base of Midrash and Dafka the Supreme Court that Lishchas Hagaz is that confers upon you the status of being a Zakim Mamre. I know Bishop is taller. The it says Valisa. Yisrael is higher than anywhere else. But no, I know that. It says, time will come, that we will no longer say, Chai Hashem that no, the Abish is one who took out Mitzrayim, but rather the latest miracle, because the latest one makes you forget the earlier one. He took us, brought us up to Yisrael. He took us all from the north. When we call our from the entire world, that you rejected us, you dispersed us, as most of us sit in our land. There's not halacha if somebody says he's going to make an aliyah out of a Yisrael, whether that's considered a neder or not, because it says aliyah. That's the basis of why we call it aliyah. Aliyah when you go to Yisrael, because going up. The Radvaz already was asked in many. What do you mean that the base of Yerushalayim is the highest place? When you go to Yerushalayim, you want to go to the Kaisel, you always got to walk down, always down the hill, not up. And Yerushalayim, the Radvaz not only lived in Egypt, but he did live in Yerushalayim for a while. Writes that since the pasuk says ha'imim oru ad yisayba, the Goyim decided they have to undermine the very foundations of the Beis Hamikdash. They kept on digging and digging and digging, and they never got to the foundations. But because of that, Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash now is lower than the rest of Yerushalayim. And what exactly means that it's the highest point? I know what do you mean that it's Yisrael is the highest point. So some Sefer others try to talk about that's more spiritual than physical. And some Sefer talks about the idea that the world is a ball, and by ball any point is always the same. There's nothing higher or lower, and that's why it means it must be a spiritual height. Others say it means literally. Talk about we learned. Okay, now we have 3 opinions. According to Rameh, Zokin Mamre, the only time you chayv Zokin Mamre is if he argues about mitzvahs that you get chorus if you violate it, and if you did it by mistake, you get karmachatas. That's the only time you get killed. Rabbi Yehuda says no. Anything, anything which is based on the Torah, like film. How do you know what film is? The Rabbanon say, but it comes from the Torah. Even those things he gets killed for. And Rab Shimon says, I feel diktuk echad medikte seifim. Even if he argues on something the Rabbanon came up with, and he defies the Rabbanon's wishes, he will get killed for that as well. Says the Gemara, my time is Rameh. What's this for Rameh? He learns Gomar Dover. He learns Dover. Here it says there it says when the entire community made a mistake. It says Venelim Dover Me'ene Hakol. That they forgot something was forgotten, Me'ene Hakol, and then they bring a special carbon. He's Malahal Dover Shachaya, the Kodesh Rosh Gogachatas. Just look over there, it's talking about amazing, you bring a Kodesh and Beshegi Gechatas. I've kind of here too. Dover, something Shechayev I was doing the Kodesh Rosh Gogachatas. So according to Rameh, the only Avedis that Zokim Mamre defies the instructions of the rabbis is if it's something that is from those 36 Avedis that you receive chorus for. Rabbi Yehuda goes further. He says no. You look in the pasuk. It says that Al Pi in the pasuk that continues Al Pi HaTorah Asher Yerucha, based on the Torah that they teach you. So it's a Torah, but they taught you. So it's come to Torah, and the rabbis explain what it means. Even that, if you argue with them, you get like tefillin. How do we know what it is? Then you Zokim Mamre. Adi Torah the Yerucha, Torah, and you argue. And Rab Shimon, he says anything, because the pasuk it says over there also, and you should follow whatever the rabbis say to you. From that place, and he dashes who means anything. I feel cold duhu, any amount. Tell me this. Why don't you interpret for me this entire brayso? See if you can fit this entire brayso according to Rameh, that every one of the examples says in this brayso is a chorus mahatorah. How's it work? And now the rest of the Gemara today is going to be going through every single case of the brayso, how it leads to chorus. Some of them are obvious, some of them are not obvious at all. How does it lead to chorus? Only the Papa, I can't be bothered. It's too long to write. I said, Puk Tagmale, why don't you do me a favor? You go and explain to him how the entire thing fits in to the Rameir. Okay, so we're going to go through the whole thing. Problem means you have to be a qualified member of the business. Fine. It's how's Ibushana lead to chorus? We're talking about that they know how to go ahead and decide to determine a leap year or a leap month. Now we learned there's a machlekes regarding till when can you decide to make a leap year. Some say we had before in being Sanhedrin Daf, you can make it till the very end of Adar, except not the day that it could have been a Chodesh is too late. But the entire month of Adar you can still determine that you're being a leap year. Let's say things changed, and according to some, you can only make a leap year if we're going through Zakir Mamre, all the cases Zakir Mamre. And in fact, we're just starting right now. According to Meir, he says Zakir Mamre is only if you argue on those mitzvahs that lead to chorus. So we go through every single case that this Brisa mentions that leads to chorus. The first one is determining a leap year. We'll pay Zayin with all about 6 lines at the bottom. According to one opinion, after Purim, you can no longer go ahead and make a leap year. And why not? Because people already heard of the Rosh of the Pesach, because 30 days before Pesach, you're tashing, and in their heads, it's already Pesach in 30 days. So you can tell them a week later, no, Pesach is going to be in a month and a half. They won't believe you. So therefore, we decide, you know what? After Purim, we can no longer talk about. It's no longer to change the date for Pesach. Others say no to the very end of Adar. So here will come a big difference. So, for example, if let's say the Sanhedrin said you have a whole other to change, which means that when you thought it's Pesach, it's not going to be Pesach, it will be Purim again. So or they were saying to Purim. There's some say to Purim, some to Pesach. And whichever way you go, if you're arguing with the Chachamim, you're going to be allowing Chametz on Pesach. If you say that once Purim comes along, you can no longer make Pesach. You can no longer change. So you're going to celebrate Pesach next month, but really Pesach is the month after that. So when they'll come the month after that, so by you Pesach Sheni, you can eat Chametz. Chametz Matzim of Bayis. You'll be in Chametz Easter Karis. Or the other way around. The Chachamim say you can no longer declare the change after Purim, and he decided you have to change. So when it comes to the Pesach, which is the next month, he's going to say it's still Purim again. So that's how you get cars. Pretty obvious. Okay, that's obvious. Next one. We said do halacha. If you're arguing halacha mashina, which argument of halacha mashina leads to chorus? Halacha achados, the halacha of the 11th day. We know that 7 days a woman is a nida. That's a cycle. Then outside of the 7 days, you have another 11 days, which is called out of cycle. And that's called the laws of Ziva. And the laws of Ziva are very different than Nida. Today we merge the two together. But the laws of Ziva are very different than the laws of Nida. And that is, if you saw only 1 day, then the next day you separate and you make sure you're clean. If you saw 2 days, the third day you separate, you make sure you're clean. If you saw 3 consecutive days, then you're Zavah Gdoila. And then you have to now wait for 7 clean days. The blood has to stop. You have to wait 7 clean days. Then we have carbon at the end. Well, what happens the 11th day of Ziva? If the 11th day is Ziva, there's no point in waiting the next day, because the next day, even if she sees blood, that's Nida. So the Ziva is over. There's no point in counting the next day and looking to see. The 9th day, you do count the next 2 days, because you could turn it into a Ziva Daila. If she's 9, 10, 11, 3 consecutive days. What about the 10th day? And here, so the Itmar Asiri, the 10th day, now the 10th day can never become to a 3-dayer. So the question, but because 10th day, even if you saw 10th and 11th, the 12th days, right, is a need period. So that you can never become a Zavak Daila. But do you still have to wait 1 day? Because the thing is, if you see 1 day, you got to wait 1 day. Do we still apply that law that the 11th day should be the day of Shmira for the 10th day? Or do we say there's no point? So the Machlekes. Abiyachana says, Asidi Chi. No, we treat Asidi like Chi. Just like Chi. You have to look the next day, make sure you're tired. So the 10th day also, you have to make sure the 11th day you're tired. And Rav Shimon Lakish says, no, just like the 11th day cannot turn into a ziva, there's no point in monitoring it. So too, the 10th day, there's no point in monitoring it, because it can never turn into a ziva, because you can only see 1 more day, and then the 3rd day you'll be a nida. Rabbi Yochanan, what do you mean, Machi? But the 9th day you have to watch the next day, monitor it. Afsidi by Shimon, because he also needs to monitor. And so now this is something to do with, could be Mazid Kodesh, and because if she's a Zav, yeah. So Mishpa, the next case, Mishpa Zehad Din. Which din? we said it's a din. Which din is he arguing with over here? So we say din is learn something from the Shabbat or other methods, and he argues. So this is something we learned before. How do you know the daughter of a woman that you raped is also to you? We know the grandchildren behind the daughter, and we had Heina, Zima, it's Exer Shabbat. But if you don't believe in Exer Shabbat, then you're going to believe it for whatever reason. I'm also with this woman's grandchildren, but I'm not also to her children, which happens to be your daughter. So Din Bita Manusasa, your daughter from Nanusa, we learned the before. Obviously, it involves Nisa Chorus, having incest. That is a Beidam Dam, Beidam Nida, Dam Later. We said Dam Div. We had 3 examples of Dam. What's the argument each one of them that he argues that can lead to chorus? What's the case of Dam Nida, Beplukta, Kav Mahal, Rabban? Now we learn Dam Hayorik, yellow blood or yellowish. So it's not so red, it's a bit brownish or less yellow. Akav Mahal, Kav Mahal says that it's Tameh, and it knows the Dam Nida. Now, what's the problem here? So he'll be machmir. So where's he going to lead to Issachorus if he follows a kav? You know what the problem is? He's going to say she's a niddah already now. But what happens if she starts seeing red blood 2 days later? According to a kav menahal, it's part of the 7 days of niddah. But according to Chachamim, the first 2 days she wasn't a niddah. So when you start counting the 7 days of niddah from when she saw red? So according to when the 7 days expire, according to kav menahal, according to Chachamim, still part of the niddah, 2 more days. And then they have, and then she's a little Issachorus. Dam later, what's the story? Dam later, we know that if a woman sees while she's giving birth, we'll say that it's dam later rather than dam ziva. She's having labor and then she sees blood. We'll say that's not dam later, that's dam later, and doesn't become tummy. But if there's a rest, let's say there's pain, and let's say there's labor, and then the labor comes on the onset of labor, and then she bleeds, and then for 24 hours she stopped bleeding. Then we say, and then she bleeds again. We'll say, this isn't any more labor because it stopped. This must be later beziva, and she has to then do the zayin, nikim and all that. The 7 clean days. So says the Gemara, the arguing is that later pluk that I've levi. We learned. Sorry, that's the ziva. That's the next case. Later is it says that by a girl, let's say first 14 days, all the blood that she sees is tameh. The next 66 days, all the blood she sees is Torah. Then after 80 days, all the blood she sees is back to normal dinner of Tumah. So what's Pshat? According to Rav, it's Mayin Echad. The blood doesn't have to stop. But the Torah Halach Ma'ishinei, or Torah says, first 14 days is Tameh. After that, the same blood is Torah. And Levi says, no. The blood has to stop. We'll say it comes from a different source. And the new blood that comes in afterwards is Dam Torah. And then after Kamina is whatever it continues flowing, doesn't stop. According to Rav, I don't care, you're Torah. According to Levi, you're still tummy. And the problem will be after the 80 days. According to Levi, the only time after 80 days we say that she becomes tummy is only if it's a new source. If it's continuing before, she's still tired. And according to Rav, no. The Torah says after 80 days, I don't care. No, but no, let's say then stop and then started. Yeah, now a new case. The 80th day. So according to him, it's if it's continued flowing, it's still damn tired. So according to Levi, she's tired. And according to the other one, no, you're a niddah. Big difference. Or she's tumbling, you walk away some English, whatever. Yeah. Rabbi, my mind is the same source. I tell it to most of the Tarat. There's a lacha that this is coming. This stage is tired. And Levi says, never you're saying there are 2 different sources. Nistim hatame, niftach hator. And now I just told you. Nistim hator, niftach hatame. Okay, another case is dam ziva, what I just told right now. Pluk to I'll be sure. Now we learned. Kishna shleishi yamim b'techadasiyim. Let's say she had labor in the 11 days of ziva, and she was bleeding. Im shafsa me'esh leis. But if it stopped, if it was a recess for 24 hours, the yolding a birth, we'll say retrospectively. So we see that since there was a stop, we say not the new blood, saying since there was a stop, is that we thought that the blood that she's bleeding because of labor. But if it stops for 24 hours before she gives birth, then you can bleed again. But that's something new. That's the labor blood. This blood before was ziva. But it had to be 24 recess. She says, the difference is, according to the first opinion, it's any 24 hours. I don't care if it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 24 hours later if it stops. According to Rabbi Shua, it has to be 24 hours, like a day period. And according to Tosfos, it means dafka night followed by day. But if it's day followed by night, even though it's mamash 24 hours, no. Rashi's example is 12 o'clock noon, which means Rashi holds it doesn't necessarily have to be night, day. It could be day, night. But a 24-hour, full 24-hour period. Then we'll determine that it's not really what do you call it? It's not. But if, let's say, so that's a machlekes. If you follow one opinion, but the other opinion is, the question is whether you're this is the meziva or is it labor paid. Bein din ledim, between one din and another din. What we said, give 3 examples. Din mammon, din fasha, din makas. Let's go through each one. Din mammon. What's the case of din mammon? The fluk is all following Rab Meir. Rab Meir said that the only time you're Zakah Mamre is if he argues about mitzvahs which lead to karis. So 36 of them. Any other mitzvah that that you argue with, I don't care. The next opinion was that even any mitzvah that the Rabban had to explain it, and you argue like tefillin. The Rabban would say it has to be 4 pashas. Doesn't say the Torah, but it's based on the Torah. And he says 5 pashas, for example. That's the Zakah Mamre as well. I don't care if it leads to karis. Then you have Rab Shimon that says, I feel cold. Even he argues on the Rabbanon, strictly the Rabbanon. If he argues, he's a Zakah Mamre. From the Brisa. The Brisa went through the pasuk. Every word in the pasuk learned new dinim. That this is what he's arguing. And we're saying that the Brisa follows Rab Meir, and Rabba couldn't be bothered. They said, Papa, you figure out how this entire Brisa follows Rab Meir. Each one leads to karis. Now, how in the world does dinim mama lead to karis? The Bezin, let's say, Pascal that Reuben does owe the money to Shimon, and the other Bezin no. How does it lead to karis? So this is interesting. Dini Mammon is but pluked to the Shmuel, but what Shmuel says, Shnein should done the name din. 2 people Pascal said, so the Din Torah says 2 people, 2 judges, and they say, Reuben, you're $100 to Shimon. So Reuben paid the money to Shimon, belonging out to Shimon. Shimon goes ahead and gives it to a woman and gets her engaged. She's engaged to Shimon. However, Ravu says, according to Bavu, it's not a Din Torah, which means you just stole money from Reuben, gave it to Shimon. So when Shimon gave that money to the woman, he's stolen money, so she's not engaged to him. When another person comes to this woman now and gives a kedushin, according to if you follow Bavu, she's engaged to the second person. But he follows Zakah Mamre, she'll be engaged to the first person, she'll totally ignore the second person, when in fact she's a married woman to the second person, and she has no right to live with the first person. So there comes the problems of Isakaris. If there's no witnesses, you get karis. A married woman. Din Fasha, what's the case in Fasha? Now we learned, Rebbe says, if you would try to strike one person and you hit a woman instead, the Pasuk says, but you didn't carry out your thought. You wanted to kill that man. So we had a machlekes before, Reb Shimon, and Rebbe explained to Reb Shimon whether you're chayiv or not. At least Rebbe is a chayiv mama. Then we have to understand Chizki says you don't even have to pay money either. However, so now let's go according to Rebbe. She says, mama, since you did not intend to kill the woman, you don't get killed, but you pay money. I don't money. Means you get killed. Over here talking about money. Now, this is a case of killing the person or not, because it's a tzicha. However, there's no karis there. So therefore, the case again is, what happens, the guy went ahead and passed like Rebbe, so there's money. So he's entitled to take the money, use that to marry a woman. But according to other opinion, it means we'll kill the guy, then you had no right to take money. And if you took money, if you had no right to take money, you took money, then you're giving it to a woman, she's not mekudesh to you. And then Achman is the second person. The pluk did Abishmol Rabban, and what's the din? Malchus the argument Abishmol Rabban. It's not Malchus begimo. How many judges do you need? For Malchus, you need 3. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel 20 because of 23. Now, and where's the house lead to curse? Because if the din is you have to have 23 judges to give Malchus, and you only had 3, and when you gave him the third amount, you have no right to. You have no right to. So you made a chabola. When you make a chabola on a person, even though the common says the bezin, you have no right to hit him. You have to pay him out. So the money that you pay now, he deserves. But if you hold the halach is that you need that 3 people's enough, then you don't owe any money, and he's a ganef for taking that money. He grabbed it, and then he used the money to marry a woman. The same thing. Then he went further. When it comes to leprosy, leprosy is a person in a house with clothes. Right person is not abundant. Now we learned beheaded kodim halav and tummy. It says depends on the different shades of color and the white hair. If the beheaders came there before the white hair, tummy being side love, and if the white hair came cuddled before the beheaders, the off color the skin, then tar. What about suffix? One opinion says Tamei to show I'm a car. Another opinion says that car. And what does car mean? My car. And whatever car means tar. That you are tar. Since we don't know, you are tar. And the difference would be if you walk in the base of English, a tumbling person won't be chayiv kares. If we declare you tummy, then you're chayiv kares. If we don't declare you tummy, you're not chayiv kares. Again, nigay. That's nigay bottom. What's the argument regarding houses? The plukta of Rabbi Shimon, Rabbanon. Not Rabbi Shimon. We had it before already. According to Rabbi Shimon, you're not chayiv unless you have mamish two sides of a bean coming to the corners and they're both contiguous to each other. My time. What's the logic of Rabbi Lazar of Rabbi Shimon? Ksiva says kir. Ksiva says kir rice. You have one wall, like two walls. How the that counts over the corner. Okay, and again, if you touch a ball of your tummy, then you walk the base and make the same nafmina. And the last one is nigib god in closing. We know by a person, if the entire person becomes full of leprosy, he becomes tired. There's no logic to it. What about clothing? If the entire clothes became now filled with leprosy, we learn from a person that you're tired. It says that expression by a person. There's different kinds of leprosy. The same thing by a person. Then it says, so that's again. And then the question is, if you're tired, you walk the base of English when you're really tummy. Then the pasuk says, then it says divrei, and we said before divrei are words, things that you make up with words. What do you mean things you make up with words? And we said that talks about erchin. You say I'm taking upon myself whatever my value. Charamim, if you just consecrate something, which is machlekes, we'll soon see whether it goes to kind of base of English, and hegdesh is you make something. Erchin, the case of erchin, now we learned hamarich pachas and melchaydish. If you're ma'irich a kid under a month old, the Torah starts with melchaydish. There's no real intrinsic value to a kid under 30 days old. But a mayor hold, a person doesn't say word stam in the belt tonight. So if he said that, if he said under 30 days old, that meant you meant to give the value in a slave market, not an erech, but the value in a slave market. Rameir says you got to give the money, whatever it is worth in a slave market. And what happens? And what happens if, let's say, the Gabe Bezek comes and seizes the money? If we say that then the Gabe had a right to it. And if he gives it to a woman, then she's Mekudesh. And a woman is Mekudesh with Hegdish money if she knows it's Hegdish money. Otherwise, it's a big tircha. You do use it for limited thing. But if she knows and she's Makabel, she's Mekudesh. But if the Gabe had no right to take it because the person's words are meaningless, then he's a Ganef. It's stolen good. Yeah. Hacharamim is bepluked. The Rabbi Yudim said, Rabbi Natan, Rabbi Yudim said, if we say I'm consecrating something, it goes to the base of Mikdash. And if somebody decides to use it for his own purpose, he's being moyel, he's stealing the base of Mikdash. And the Chachamim say, Stam charam l'koyin. When you make a charim, it's a koyin. Now it says, like the steach, that the feel of the chenim goes to a koyin. So any do a koyin. That if you're machim, his kachim, that he's made a ned that he's going to donate to the base of Mikdash, then he has to give the value of that to the koyinim. And depending on whatever you own in that animal, you got to give to the koyinim. And that's the machlekes of that money. If you don't owe the money to the koyinim, it's not chal with that money doesn't belong to koyinim. They use it to make out a woman. The same thing. Hegdeshes, the pluk to the Yakarabon. What story? They're telling you about Yakarabon. I feel it's like a little fork of Hegdish. You want to redeem and take it out of Hegdish, you need 10 koyinim. We had this in the first mission, in the longest mission in Sanhedrin. Because it says 10 times the word koyin. So now, if you redeem with 9 people, according to Yehuda, it's not redeemed. It still belongs to Hegdish. And therefore, if you use it, you're stealing. And according to Rabbanan, you're not stealing because it was redeemed. No, it's private money now. Again, whether you can use the money to make out a woman. Ribais, the hashka arguments. This is the hashkas, soite, va'arifas, egla, and taras and mitzayda. These 3 cases. So maybe we'll stop here because it continues going all the cases.